What is the weirdest thing you've ever done for money? Italian man came up to me on holiday in a town near Naples. He asked me to go talk to these two Americans. He gave me 10 euros to buy them a couple of beers and talk about whatever. No idea why this sounds like some movie. I wonder if you were a distraction while they robbed the couple's hotel room, or maybe you were involved in some weird money laundering scheme. I was paid to watch alternating clips of nature and pornography while a camera in my vagina measured the hue of my vaginal walls to determine the amount of blood flow to the area, which indicates the level of physical arousal. At the same time, I also had to take notes on what I thought about the images I was seeing, rating arousal level. This was to attempt to study the relationship between physical arousal and mental arousal. This just reminded me of the time I accidentally signed up for a gynecological research study. It was my first time getting an annual by myself on my own insurance, so I had no idea how many papers I needed to sign / what a normal amount of prodding is done during these things. I literally just had the mentality that if they say I need a certain test or whatever, I'll get it done. So the nurse comes in, and apparently she just had some dental procedure where her face and lips were swollen and numb, so she's not enunciating everything properly and also holding her hand above her face because I think she was self-conscious of the swelling. Well, I have terrible hearing and rely on lip reading a lot of the time, so I was only catching a word here and there. Something along the lines of, I hear this is your first exam. Let me explain what is going to happen, and then starts talking about something else and showing me all these giant tips and what I'll need to do with them. Again, I have nothing to compare this to, so I just assume this is normal and do as I'm told after signing what seems like an insane amount of insurance and liability documents. It was unpleasant, but since I was doing my own swabs it wasn't that bad. So we finish up, everything's good, and then they tell me to come back in 3 months to get reswabbed. 3 months later I show up thinking I was going to get test results or something, and the same nurse hands me $90 and asks if I would like to continue with the research study. I said sure, and ended up making $300 that summer. When I was in 6th grade, some 8th graders came up to me and offered me $5 to snort crushed Tic Tacs. As I was snorting them, one of them got a teacher and told her I was doing drugs. I started crying and explained everything, and after the principal confirmed that they were just Tic Tacs, the 8th graders all got a week of detention. And I still got my $5. As an adult, client asked me to create a PowerPoint for him for a major presentation he was doing for top secret organization. I owned a web consulting company at the time, but he had been a top client, so I acquiesced. After a while, the modifications and wording become more and more bizarre. He would contact me weekly with new changes and additions, and I soon realized there was something mentally amiss with the gent. I had a connection with his family and wanted to alert them that he was paying me good money for this odd project, and I didn't want to charge for something that was clearly coming from a delusional state. His wife contacted me and asked if I would please continue working with him, and she would pay my full rate for the service. They were incredibly wealthy, and this was not going to make any dent in their massive fortune. She said the project was making him happier than he'd been in months, and he was focused and staying in one place to work on it, and it gave her a rest from his dementia / Alzheimer's. I figured out a way to keep working with him, still didn't charge my full rate, but learned a lot about maintaining a positive relationship with an older person who is losing their cognitive functions, which prepared me well for now as my father is heading in that direction. Wrote fanfic to order. Gym characters and plot, or plot what plot scenario, $15 per 1,000 words. Was fun and occasionally hilarious, even if I'd never admit publicly to some of the stories I wrote. It was that, or work a second retail job. Writing commissions 1. So how can someone get into doing something like that? I'd be completely down to write weird fanfic for fellow perverts. I used to advertise it on my Tumblr. I have no idea where the fans have migrated to now. Probably depends on the fandom. I'm getting old. That's approximately the fourth mass fandom migration I've seen, and I was too busy when Tumblr imploded to figure out where people were heading this time. I also have a fair number of readers for one particular fandom, and all it took was posting a few commissions I was willing to own up to publicly on A03 to get word of mouth going. Then I had a second A03 account for the commissions that I didn't want to tie to my main account, though I assume this is a fairly open secret, given there were a few dozen people who knew my nom de plume for the extra weird stories for hire. I don't do it anymore, because the current day job pays better, and I just didn't have time, but it saved me from having to get a second minimum wage retail job several years ago. Made ends meet. Was fun. Edit to add, be careful of the fandom you do this in. Some TPTB are fine with commissions. Some are not. It's getting more and more acceptable, but you don't want to run afoul of the fandoms that are not okay with fan making some pocket money off their property. Babysat a rock star before a gig, so that he would stay put and not go off into the local area, which he didn't know, looking for drugs. We talked about TV and films edit. I think I've told this story before and said who it was, but I won't say again. It was more than 20 years ago and everyone involved is British. The need to do this kind of thing is exactly why Get Him to the Greek was made, but that was 10 plus years later. I wouldn't be surprised if stories Russell Brand Cantel got put straight into the movie if he could remember any of them. I worked as a runner, paid intern, for a TV talk show in the UK. David Hasselhoff was a guest, and while researching him, one of the team found out he was in a softcore porn movie. We were based in Soho, London, so they sent me out to the sex shops to see if I could track it down. I was sick with anxiety going into the shops, but I kept thinking back, quote, at least I'm being paid. Funniest thing was I gave no context as to why I was hunting down David's sex tape. All they knew was a nervous looking kid was desperate to see Hasselhoff's clan. So, a few years ago, I signed up for Amazon's Mechanical Turk program to answer surveys and do other tasks for small amounts of money. Do a 10-minute survey for $1, that sort of thing. Funding my Hearthstone hobby. I followed the subreddit that posted the best Turks to complete. I'm watching it and see one for 8 cents a prompt that people were completing in 30 seconds. It was labeling porn videos. You would go into the Turk, see a few images, and then write a title. They gave you some clues to write about the men and women going at it. I made about $100. Paid my electricity bill that month. Just followed a formula like hair color plus age of woman plus nasty synonym for screwing by plus age of man. So you'd end up with redhead teen gets annihilated by filthy old man or blonde MILF sucks the life out of college bro. I got an email from the company telling me I was incredible, and they laughed so hard when they saw I did hundreds of Turks. I printed the email and put it on my fridge and my wife was very proud of me. I transcribed psychology interviews for a friend. I was in college, and she was getting her master's in clinical, and needed help transcribing interviews with subjects she'd done for her thesis. I said I'll do it for free. She said, no, you'd want to be paid for it, and she did. She obfuscated the subject information and just gave me the dicta tape. At the end of it, I'm happy she paid me. That was nice of her to insist. Jesus Christ, that was some depressing stuff. Her topic had something to do with bonding between mothers and stepchildren. I work for an at-home transcription service, and I get to transcribe a lot of interesting stuff. I transcribe a lot of calls of people describing their car accident to an insurance adjuster, but I also do podcasts, Zoom classes, and ghostwriting stuff. So I transcribed long speeches about dating advice, sovereign citizen beliefs, what heaven and hell are like from a Bible class, and interviews with a guy about his brother's murder for a book he was writing. Thankfully, I haven't had anything too distressing come down the pike. I can imagine it would be difficult, since I have to listen multiple times to get it all right. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing to see more Reddit reading videos. Have an awesome day.